don't we get started here, Steve? My name is Ryan Jennings, and I'm the President and CEO of the Wayne County Community Foundation, and I want to welcome you to part 2 of this webinar series. 2 weeks ago, we had a session with donors about planned giving, and we are excited to have a deeper dive into planned giving for professional advisors as a resource. We here at the foundation are working with Cornerstone and Steve to build out our planned giving program at the community foundation. That's an endless journey of developing relationships with donors so that they trust that the foundation is a great place to leave a bequest, but also a place to donate to impact positively in the community while they're living. So we've been working with Steve for the past few weeks, and we look forward to continuing our relationship with him through this year. So more to come. Steve comes to this work with a unique perspective of having served on a community foundation board in the Lehigh Valley for 9 years. So we're looking forward to him sharing his expertise about planned giving with the lens of how professional advisors can support their clients and work with community foundations in particular. So Steve, a few housekeeping items. This is a webinar, so it's not, the folks that are participating, we can't see you, we see your names, but as we are recording this session to be able to share with folks that aren't able to join live, they won't be able to see your information when we share that link. If you have to leave for any reason, this will be recorded and we'll send out a link and a password to be able to view it later or catch something that you missed. So you'll have that opportunity and we'll share that resource from the foundation. If you have any questions, you can pop them into the question and answer section at the bottom of the Zoom, and Steve or I will answer those questions as they come up throughout the session. So I'll turn it over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Great, Ryan. Thanks so much. An unabashed plug for community foundations. My experience serving on the board of the Lehigh Valley Community Foundation was a real educational one in terms of understanding the breadth of the nonprofit world and the good that community foundations do, particularly for many smaller organizations that need this kind of partnership as a way to underpin what they're doing in the community to make life better for both those who are in need, as well as helping institutions that are considered treasures in local communities to thrive. So today we were going to spend a little bit of time just first painting the landscape. For many of you, you may be aware of this already, but I thought it was good to get everybody to an equal footing on this. So Angela, if you would advance the slide one, would take a quick look at the snapshot of giving across the United States, particularly on the left-hand side. The pie chart shows that roughly 9 to 10% of giving on an annual basis is coming from bequests. And that's a very important fact to have in mind. Many people give at a point when they're no longer concerned about self-preservation or taking care of a spouse. And it kind of frees up all of their assets for thinking about what they want to do to make a difference in the world. If you look at the totality of the pie chart, however, you'll realize very quickly that almost the entirety of giving in the United States is coming from individuals. There's a reference to foundations, and of course they are a non-living entity. But the reality is most foundations are set up by individuals, either during their lifetime at a major liquidation event or at their deaths, whether you're talking the Ford Foundation or some of Pew and some of these other large foundations, or you're talking individual family foundations that have been set up. The only slice that is not individual is the corporation. And even there, the giving from corporations is a lot of times based on relationships and what corporations want to do in terms of giving back to their local communities or the communities in which they do business. The right-hand side just very quickly paints the picture of where individuals and organizations are directing their philanthropy. And it's not surprising, I think, for many that the largest share is going to religion and secondly to education. But there's also a tremendous amount going to human services and then the others that you see there. The two takeaways from this slide, for me always, is that 80% of planned gifts are bequests. So contextually, for smaller organizations, if they are not talking with their donors about remembering them in their long-term plans, they're missing a significant chunk of potential resources that can help drive their mission. And the second is that most people write their last will 5 years before death. Another statistic that might startle you if you're not aware of it is that 65% of Americans do not have a will. And if you take wills that are 10 to 20 years old, so basically probably very out of date in terms of beneficiaries and wishes and consideration of what assets are, that would include about 75% of Americans. The reality, of course, for those who are estate attorneys is everybody has a will, you know that. Every state has statutes that dictate what happens in the case of somebody passing away. And they delineate based on who remains in terms of blood relatives, spouse, parents, children, siblings, what goes to each category of individual, and it is taxed frequently. So it's important that we keep that in mind, because the one group that are not included in any of those statutes in any state is charity. So if you or your clients have charitable interests, it is really critical to have a will, have it up to date, and to specifically designate what you want to go to charity. Angela?
Steve, if I might jump in real quick.
Sure.
Looking at this chart on the right-hand side with multiple colors,
Yes.
of all of those sections of giving and source uses of giving, besides international affairs, which some community foundations might dabble in a little bit, but predominantly not, all of those other pieces can be supported through community foundations, even religion in the form of an endowment to support a church or synagogue or place of worship that can be at a community foundation. So that's kind of a good catch-all space of all of those interests.
And shamelessly, I will put in another plug, which you did not ask me to do. And that is, if you have a very large appreciated asset, but you have interest in multiple colored components of that pie chart, a community foundation is a great way to move one single appreciated asset and then have it broken out and directed in multiple avenues to do the work you want to do. You don't have to figure out, how am I going to split up this singular asset into multiple pieces to then give to charity? You can direct it to the community foundation and then parse it out from there. Okay, Angela, super. So as the attorneys will definitely be aware, and many other advisors will probably be aware as well, bequests can be done in a number of ways. And in our prior webinar, we talked about the advantages of percentage giving versus specific dollar amount. My recommendation always, and I think many attorneys subscribe to this, is to put everything in percentage terms. It keeps everything in relation to one another. You don't have some things that are a specific amount and then others that are percentage, because they can get out of whack as an estate grows or shrinks at a given point in time. All you have to do is look at the last year in the stock market to know you could hit a peak or a valley on your given date of death and have a decidedly different sum going to individuals and organizations. And if you specify a specific dollar amount to an organization and percentages to heirs, living heirs, you may find, well, you won't be here, but your heirs may find they have either been disproportionately affected positively or negatively. So my recommendation is always to stick to percentages. And I think that is reflected in the retirement plans only working in percentages. They don't allow people to say a specific dollar amount. It's all kept in percentages. Another question to be asking if you're advising clients is, do you want this to be used as current use, unrestricted money, or endowment, where it's permanently held? The community foundation has endowed funds, which then provide on a perpetual basis a stream of income to benefit either grant making that the community foundation is doing or specific organizations that you wish to benefit. And there's no right or wrong to this. I think this is very much a personal preference. Do you want this to be something that is constantly providing a stream of income to support the work of the organization, or do you want the leadership at the time, whatever time it is that you pass away, to have the ability to decide what to do with those assets? Some organizations have specific gift acceptance and unrestricted bequest policies that will dictate what percentage of an unrestricted bequest goes into endowment, quasi-endowment, basically. But not all in fact, not many organizations have that kind of policy. So it's always good to talk with the organization about how they treat unrestricted bequests if that's the direction you're thinking. Supplying sample language. It's really helpful to people to see how easy it is to include a bequest to charity in their plans. We can certainly provide sample language, and Ryan and I have discussed that. But as advisors, you're really the experts, and you will have 100%, hopefully, view of what your client's situation looks like and what is advisable for them in terms of the appropriate language. But we can provide certainly the tax identification number and sample language based on percentage terms. It's important to the foundation to understand what the wishes of individual donors are. So we typically will ask for some kind of documentation, either a redacted copy that includes the language specific to the foundation or the organizations to benefit through the foundation, or just to get that language in writing, even if it's not as an excerpt from the original document. It's just good for there to be a record of that, fully understanding that a donor's wish may change over time, and that will come back to that in outright giving. People like to test, or increasingly like to test out what their ultimate bequest will do to make sure that their wishes actually are going to have the impact they wish for. Next slide, Angela. So how do we typically identify those who have a planned giving potential? One is to look at the frequency of the giving, and certainly Ryan and the foundation will do that as they look at who's supporting the foundation and organizations through the foundation on an annual basis. Look at the longevity. How long a period of time have they been doing this? The age, so certainly the older an individual gets, the more likely they are to be a good candidate for planned giving. And finally, gender. It's no surprise, I don't think, to anyone that women outlive men by roughly 8 years. That has shrunk a little bit over time as women have gotten into the workplace and had the same stress levels as men have in terms of job responsibilities and some of other behavioral things like drinking and smoking. So we can turn to the next page. So what is this planned giving and why is this important? So as we start our careers and we have increasing amounts of disposable income to give to the charitable organizations that are important to us, income and motivation rise kind of together. And then at a certain point at the peak of our career, where maybe we're making some major gifts to organizations that we care about, we start to look down the road at the horizon and we see, our disposable income is going to drop off, and we're concerned about some big expenses. Are we going to need to be in a care facility? Are there going to be health issues that are expensive to maintain at a point when we're no longer making an annual income outside of what we might have in a pension or retirement plan or Social Security? And our desire to give may remain high, but our ability to give, at least mentally, is reduced. And so this gray shaded area gives an opportunity for people to demonstrate their affection and their commitment to causes that are important to them by setting up deferred types of gifts, whether that's a life income gift, which we'll talk more about today, or whether that's an ultimate bequest that will come to fruition at their passing. Next slide. So there are multiple bequest vehicles besides simply putting a bequest provision in one's will. There are retirement plan assets. This is increasingly becoming the single largest asset that most Americans have, followed closely by their real estate, their home. Life insurance policies are another, and payable on death accounts are a third. Each of these is governed by the beneficiary designation that you specify during your lifetime. And it's important during open enrollment periods, like most companies are going through right now. So we've reached toward the end of the tax year, to look at who you've designated as beneficiaries. It is not uncommon for people to pass away and for heirs to discover that a deceased spouse or a former spouse or a deceased sibling has been named as beneficiary of that remainder interest. And that creates all sorts of problems, particularly in the case that you have remarried and there's a new spouse, and now that spouse is not entitled to any of the retirement asset. Retirement plans, however, also make a tremendous gift opportunity for charity, because 100 cents on the dollar goes to charity. Whereas if you leave it to living individuals, they will have to pay the income and estate tax on it before they really realize what the net remainder is. And that net can only sometimes be 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. So if you have philanthropic interests, the retirement plan assets are a great vehicle to direct to the community foundation or specific charities you wish to benefit. And it will happen automatically. It doesn't go through probate. It just goes straight to them. Life insurance policies are another great vehicle. I'm not a huge proponent of buying insurance policies just to give to charity. But if you have gotten to the stage in life where you bought insurance policies to protect a spouse or take care of children in the event that you passed away prematurely and you no longer need those policies, they're a great vehicle that has cash in them that you can give to charity and get a tax deduction for doing it and get it out of your estate. Payable on death accounts, you may or may not be familiar with, but you can name somebody to receive the assets in accounts at your death. My only caution on all of these is that when your clients sit down with you, that they are really thoroughly going through their list of outside things, assets that they hold, and walking through the dollar values of each and who, if anyone, is named as beneficiaries on that. Retirement plan assets, you don't have a choice. The companies force you to name a beneficiary. If you have a spouse, it's automatically 50% typically going to a spouse. The question is, have you updated your plans if you have changed marital status at any point since you started your retirement plan asset? I think we can move on to the next slide. A couple of things to be aware of if you're not already. Congress is currently reviewing and reconciling two separate bills, one from the House, one from the Senate. The Secure Act, it's updating it, all with the intention of encouraging more Americans to put more into retirement, to get started if they haven't already. So new employees that join a firm under both plans would be automatically enrolled, whereas that does not happen currently. And the minimum looks like it will be 3% with the two different versions. One is increasing it incrementally. That's the House version, up to 10% over a number of years. The other thing that both bills are working toward in different ways is to increase the year at which you must take the required minimum distribution. It was originally 70.5. You may give to charity, to the community foundation or other organizations, up to $100,000 per year without recognizing it as income, starting at 70.5. The number that's changing is when you must start taking money out of your retirement plan without being penalized. And currently it's 72. The two plans for the House and the Senate differ a little, but they're moving that number to 75 over a period of years. So things to keep in mind. Again, cautionary tales, just make sure that you are reviewing who are the beneficiaries of your retirement plan assets on an annual basis. Next slide. Life insurance, we talked very quickly about. There are different ways of using life insurance, and certainly those who are on the call today that are on the insurance side and very knowledgeable will know each of these. Paid up policies make a great gift vehicle. Setting up life insurance trusts can create a source of funds to pay for taxes if you have an estate that's going to have a sizable tax burden, and it gets those dollars out of the estate. So the money flows almost immediately from the settlement of the life insurance and gives your heirs resources to handle taxes if you're not having your estate pay the tax yourself. Do's and don'ts. This applies both to life insurance and retirement plan assets. Don't pull these assets back into an estate accidentally by referencing it in the will and making directions on it. Just let these go by the beneficiary designations to make sure that they're not suddenly becoming subject to tax. Okay, so life income. We talked briefly about this in the previous webinar with donors. I'm happy to go into as much detail as would be productive for folks, and please give me a flag in the chat if you want to go into more depth than I'm offering. I'll move through these kind of rapidly. Charitable gift annuities provide a fixed income to individuals. The income is based on the age of the beneficiary at the time the gift annuity is set up, and that is fixed for the rest of time. So in an inflationary period, obviously, inflation might eat into that annuity over time, so be cognizant of that. The payout on gift annuities is typically set by the American Council on Gift Annuities, and they are regularly reviewing what's happening in the interest rate environment as to what is appropriate. Roughly 50% of a gift annuity is intended to be a gift to charity, and the other 50% gets returned to the donor or the donor's designated income beneficiary over their lifetime. Gift annuities are a great vehicle for appreciated assets, a stock that has suddenly shot up, or there's going to be a merger and you don't want to get subject to the capital gain that will come out of that. You can give that to charity and postpone recognition of gain. A portion of the gain is attributed to the charitable portion of the charitable gift annuity and never is taxed for capital gain. And then the portion that's attributable to distribution back to you over your lifetime will be subject to capital gain. And we can go through that in a numeric example in a little bit. Charitable remainder trusts are different in that they are a separate legal entity and they stand alone on their own, and they give you the ability to set up something that allows the market value as it rises and falls to affect the payout you get. So you select upfront what percentage payout you want. The minimum the IRS allows is 5%. And personally, over a 30-year time horizon, I wouldn't recommend going above 7, and particularly in this performance return environment and what we anticipate for the next couple of years, I honestly wouldn't go above 6% because you want a portion of the assets to be reinvested and help your income from it keep pace with inflation. The last item here I included because it's important to know, but most people are not actively using pooled income funds. It's a mutual fund basically for charitable organizations. They fell out of favor as the interest rates dropped precipitously. I'm not sure that they will actually come back. It's an interesting concept. It's one I just put out there so you're aware of it in case a client or someone else asks about it. So gift annuities, what are they backed by? They're backed by the charity's unrestricted assets. So an endowment specifically designated by a donor will not back a gift annuity, but all of the other assets, buildings, cash, all of that backs a gift annuity. So it's important to know when you're working with a donor or client and the charity to look at the strength of that charity because that is what's backing up that commitment to pay fixed income for the rest of the donor's life. There are a variety of types of gift annuities. So there's an immediate payout where, for instance, I set up a gift annuity with the foundation. The foundation says, oh, you're 60. I'm not quite there, but I count because I'm within 6 months. So you're 60, and here's the rate that the American Council on Gift Annuity offers for gift annuities. And that is my fixed rate for the rest of my life. I will get back a combination of ordinary income and tax-free return of my principal, which I referenced a minute ago. If I give an appreciated stock, I'll get back a mix of tax-free return of principal, ordinary income, and capital gain income. Because I'm so young, and that's that's my version of myself, I could set up a deferred gift annuity. And in fact, that's what I've done. I've actually done a flexible deferred, which is the next. These are closely related. I haven't set a target date that I will start taking the deferral, but there is a beginning period. So you can either defer it to a specific year, and you can defer it to a flexible year. So in the flexible, your rate will vary based on when you start taking the gift annuity payments after a certain point. So the calculations are all determined. I'm using a 10-year deferral when I set up each one of these. The rate will go up if I don't take it at 70 and I wait to 71, it will be a little higher. If I wait to 72, it will go up a little further. And part of that's simply based on the mortality tables and the likelihood that I will actually collect the roughly 50% that the calculations are set up to return to me. The recommended minimum for charitable gift annuities is $10,000. I've actually used that as my kind of ladder for building fixed income for myself as part of my retirement planning. I've also used this as a vehicle to support a sister who needed some additional financial assistance so I don't know how much depth you want me to go into, Ryan, but in my case, I had a bequest intention for my alma mater, Lehigh University, and I decided instead of waiting for my death, why wouldn't I start funding life income for my sister and for myself that will satisfy that in a way that there will be scholarship funds to add to my scholarship fund at my passing. So that's kind of a quick thing. We'll take a look at a graph next, the pictorial that shows the donor transfers either cash or securities or some other asset to the institution, which is managing the gift annuity. I get an immediate income tax deduction for setting it up. It is not 100% deduction. So it's based on what my investment in the gift annuity looks like. So if I'm going to projected to get back $6,000 over my lifetime, my income tax deduction would be $4,000. And then I also benefit because I have reduced capital gain to recognize if I've chosen to give an appreciated stock to fund the gift, and then I get the fixed income payments over the course of my life, or in my sister's case, she is getting immediate payments to help her now. And at the end, the remainder goes to charity. In my case, it's Lehigh. It could be the community foundation or any other organization you wish to support that has a gift annuity program. Can we move to the next one? So this is small print, and I don't know how many people can see it without glasses or with glasses from this point. This is just a quick snapshot to give you a look at 100, and we used 100,000 just to kind of make it easy for percentage terms. At this point, and this was before the July 1st increase in gift annuity payments, a 65-year-old would get a 4.2% payout. And you'll see the tax deduction below that was roughly 39%, a little over. If there are two lives, so husband and wife decide to set up one of these, the rate of payout would be lower because the life expectancy for two people will be much longer than for one 65-year-old. So the charitable deduction will also be lower. But again, it all depends on what you're looking at. I've worked with individuals, my own parents included. In one case, they set up two separate gift annuities, each on their own life, and then they did a separate annuity that was on their joint lives. So not all of the income would stop when the first spouse passed away. And you'll see further down, you get the breakdown of what's capital gain income, tax-free portion, and the ordinary income. The tax-free portion, the capital gain portion that's associated with the non-gift is spread out over your life expectancy. And as soon as you've reached your life expectancy, then all of the income becomes ordinary income. So let's talk a little bit about charitable remainder trusts. I mentioned previously that they are separate legal entities. They stand on their own. The assets are invested. If the assets went to zero, there's there's nothing behind that to continue making payments. That's my caveat, my disclaimer. Likewise, these are a great vehicle if you're talking $100,000 or more for a significantly appreciated asset, to put into one vehicle that you can direct out how the remainder is going to be used, and you get the benefit, particularly if you're younger, say 65, of potential growth over your lifetime. It's not obviously it's not a guarantee. It's depending upon how the assets in the trust are invested and what the performance is of those assets. And that will determine what's left for the organization at the remainder. There are a number of different variations on a theme, which is why I love these vehicles. Based on what a donor wishes to accomplish, they can pick the vehicle that's right for them. I am not a big fan personally of the annuity trust. I think the gift annuity is a better vehicle if you want fixed income, because you get the guarantee that there will be an income stream for your life. A unit trust gives you the rise and fall effect of the markets in terms of how the vehicle is invested. A net income trust can be really handy if you have a piece of property or another asset that's hard to sell and you don't quite know when it's going to sell. You can set this up to flip basically at the point that the asset sells. You can start taking income at that point. You can do a net income with makeup, so that, you know, for the first, if it takes you 2 years or 3 years to liquidate the asset, you can hopefully go back and collect some of that unallocated income in future years when the trust is producing more. Happy to go into more details. I don't want to get into an overly complex example, but I thought it would be good to step in. We have a pictorial of this, like the gift annuity, next.
And Steve, if I can just jump in real quick, a question did come through about this.
Sure.
And Ryan, maybe this is better answered by you. It says, will the community foundation serve as trustee for a charitable remainder trust? And if so, what level fee do you charge for the administration and investment management?
Great question. We don't currently dive into charitable remainder trusts. As you're learning and understand, these are quite complex, and our foundation hopes to be able to grow to be able to manage these types of trusts, but they require some back-end setup from the community foundation. If this was of interest to a local donor, I would certainly refer them to our partners at the Scranton Area Foundation, which do have a program for charitable remainder trust. And we work closely with them regularly, but at this time, our foundation does not.
And would you, I'm just asking, do you have other professional advisors, banks and trust companies that you have partnerships with that would also be in a position maybe to manage those?
I would certainly reach out to all of our financial advisors at the banks that we work with regularly to find the best avenue to do that. Correct.
Different organizations, different banks and different organizations, different foundations will have different levels of management fees involved, and that's always good to look at up front. It's both the administration fee and then the investment management fee, and it's good to look at the totality of that in relation to the income that's to come out of the trust and what you are projecting as the total performance. So if it looks like the fees are going to be significant, that kind of helps, I think, support only a 5% payout, so that you have hopefully a growing payout over time by reinvestment. Thank you, Angela. So quick graphical on this. This looks exactly the same as the charitable gift annuity. The donor gives the assets to charity. The charity liquidates the assets, typically invested in a broad basket, so that you're diversifying out risk. There's an income tax deduction up front. Again, it's not 100% of what goes in. It's based on the life expectancy of the income beneficiary. And you have the ability to defer or reduce the capital gain tax. And then if it's a CRUT, a charitable remainder unit trust, you'll have variable payments typically what happens, there's a snapshot once a year where you take the market value, and that then determines what the 5% will be paid out on in the subsequent year. So you know in advance if your income is going to go up a little bit or go down a little bit before you actually start getting your quarterly payments. And I think most entities pay charitable remainder trusts on a quarterly basis. And then at the end, the remainder goes to charity.
Hey, Ryan, another question came through. Does the Community Foundation have any required language for charitable remainder trust, of which is the beneficiary? I know you don't serve as trustee, but they're asking about beneficiary language.
I don't have any prescribed language, but we could certainly work with the financial advisor to draft language together, but we would always recommend that the financial advisor is the expert on this topic.
Great, thank you.
And thank you, Angela, for jumping in. It's great not to have to actually go look at the chat button while we're talking. Administrative considerations, and for the advisors who are already doing this, you're very much aware of this. There is a significant time commitment to it. And I think to Ryan's point earlier, you have to have the right staff resources as an organization to be in a position to administer a charitable remainder trust. So it's important that donors keep that in mind. This is not something you want to be doing on the back of the envelope on your kitchen table yourself. I have had donors that I've worked with who insisted that they wanted to be their own trustee. And I will say almost to a person, it is not, at some point they've said, you know what, this is a lot more work than I thought. And we'd like you to step in as whatever university I was at the point to be trustee. And frequently we didn't want to because we just couldn't count on the records being accurate, and we didn't want to step into the liability of picking up the pieces from somebody else. There are annual filing requirements. There are annual distribution reporting requirements out to the income beneficiaries. There is legal and financial liability. So if you're a trustee and it's benefiting, well, and doesn't matter how many charities it's benefiting, as the trustee, you can be held to a fiduciary responsibility for how the assets are invested and whether they have done well or not done well. And then there's also the time to realization. These trusts, typically, if you set it up at age 65 and the average age is 86, you're looking at 2 decades of maintaining this. So this is not going to have immediate impact. And if that's what you want, you may want to either do this in conjunction with an outright gift or think about a different way of both supporting the organization that's important to you and addressing whatever the motivator is for setting up a trust. Charitable lead trusts, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of depth here. These are probably the most complex of the charitable vehicles. These pay the lead to charity. So they pay out an annuity or they pay out at a unit amount to charity over a fixed number of years. These are hugely helpful for high net worth individuals who want to pass on significant assets to family members or non-family members at a discounted rate. So basically what the vehicle does is it allows you to park a chunk of principal, direct annual payments to charity, and then have those principal dollars go back to other family members. So it kind of bypasses the estate. And the way it does that is the IRS looks at it and says, okay, this stream of income that's going to go to charity over 5, 10, 20 years in today's dollars is worth X. This is the total principal that's going to the next generation. You deduct out the present value of what's going to charity, and the only amount subject to estate tax, gift tax, would be the difference. And most people, when they set these up, do it in such a way that they completely eliminate any estate or gift tax by either stretching the number of years, the term over which the charity is going to get a distribution, or they increase the percentage payout, the annuity, basically, to charity to get to that zero balance. You may have heard of a very famous lead trust. That was the Jackie Onassis Trust. The intent was that $100 million was going to go to the grandchildren's level, and the children actually fought in court to have the trust broken, which was a very unfortunate thing because it took a significant portion of the assets out of play and taken away in taxation. If they had just let it run to fruition, there would have been $100 million for the grandchildren at the end of the 20-year term. No accounting for it. So the minimum recommendation is $1 million for a charitable lead trust, just because of the complexity and the administration involved with running those. I saw very quickly Angela move to the multiple disclaimers. I am not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a licensed financial practitioner. These are ideas, and we encourage you, as you're talking with your clients, to be thinking about what vehicles might be helpful to them if they have charitable intentions. And we're very happy to have conversations, no obligation, no expectation. My goal at this stage in my career is to help more people be aware both of the need to have a written will in place and the need to be thinking creatively about the totality of their assets. Most individuals look at philanthropy through the lens of their bank account and their checkbook and maybe their stock portfolio. And very few are taking into consideration a vacation home or raw land that they own, or businesses that they started and have grown significantly and are getting ready to liquidate because another generation doesn't want to continue running the business. Those are all great opportunities to both provide for living heirs and to do something philanthropic at the same time if you plan in advance. Angela, are there any other questions remaining?
Yes, actually 2 more came through. They're both directed to Ryan. So the first one is, if I bring an investment client to the community foundation to set up a fund, endowment, or life income vehicle, may I continue to manage the assets and collect the investment management fee? And is there a minimum fund amount for outside management?
So this is a topic of discussion with our organization. We haven't had that scenario pop up yet before, but I do know that other community foundations have set a certain threshold that they will continue to work with the financial advisor. Currently, we don't have that policy in place. So any donations that come to our foundation are, unless directed by the donor, otherwise they're split between the 5 institutions that we work with to manage our assets. If the donor has preference for one or the other, then the donor can do that. But currently we don't work directly with the financial advisors to continue to advise on the assets and their management.
I don't know whether this is helpful. When I was at the Community Foundation, I think the figure was $1 million at the Lehigh Valley Community Foundation for an advisor to continue managing the assets after they came to the foundation. I
think that we're still new in that realm. So I think that if an advisor brought us a client at $1 million, I think we'd be more than happy to have that discussion. Because while we're a 31-year-old organization, we're still slim staffed and continuing to learn and grow each day.
And there is a complication at which it raises the administrative costs every time there's another manager added to the pool. You have more things you're tracking and less time then for the mission work that you're actually doing.
And we're already pretty unique in that we work with 5 institutions, 3 local banks and 2 others. So that's pretty unique for community foundations. Usually they work with 1 or maybe 2. So it's because of our unique banking landscape in Wayne County, we think that that's a benefit to us, but it does come with like the complication of reconciling funds with such broad number of partners.
Angela?
Thank you. And then, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Go ahead. I thought you said there were 2 and I wasn't sure whether that was both of them.
Nope, there's one more. It says, will the foundation provide sample language for will provisions, trusts, etc., anything like that?
So we do have our donor advised agreement and some language around that. And again, we're happy to work with the donor and an advisor to make sure that we have the language needed, but we wouldn't have will provision language. We would leave that up to the experts in that field.
Great. That is all the questions that have popped up so far. That's all that I see on my end.
Wonderful. And I just wanted to add one thing about at one of the slides had mention of legacy giving, and we do at the Community Foundation have what's called the O'Neill Society, which is our legacy giving society. We do ask that donors provide written documentation that they are making a provision in their will or estate planning for the foundation and any of the funds that we manage. So that is one avenue, and we have that documentation on our website, or we have little brochures. So if anyone on this call is interested in that, and again, that would support any of the funds that we manage. It does not have to be an unrestricted gift to the Community Foundation. It could be for any of the nonprofit endowment funds or any of the different scholarships or field of interest funds that we manage at the foundation.
And I'm very happy to have a conversation. I think I mentioned this a minute ago, and tell me if you don't want me to make the offer, but I'm happy to have a conversation in conjunction with Ryan or one-on-one, whatever you or your clients would find most helpful.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, Steve. And I think it's one of those things that sometimes I get the question, like, what do people usually do? And that's, I always laugh because there really isn't a usual. Everybody's assets and charitable interest and family makeup are all really unique. And so we have to have all of those options as well, and do our best to provide options for charitable giving to serve the needs of our community as best we can. And so we're always happy to have a conversation about what might be the best vehicle or avenue or thing to explore in conjunction with the experts that are making that that advice to the client.
Great.
Well, thank you for your time, Steve. Again, this will be recorded. So if there's anything someone wanted to reference, or if you found this helpful and want to share it, Connor will be sending out a newsletter later this week or early next week with the recording. So please feel free to spread this widely with any colleagues that you might find that this would be helpful to listen to.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you all for tuning in. And please feel welcome to get in touch with us at the foundation at any time. Our contact information is all on our website at waynefoundation.org. So thank you, Angela and Steve.